If you're still wearing a cloth or surgical mask around in public, you're guilty of spreading COVID misinformation. It really is that simple. Today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
Welcome back, folks. Welcome back to the program. We're still in hour number one of this live broadcast. Thank you for rejoining us. Really appreciate it. Hello to everybody in the TNT chat community as well. We see the numbers building up there. We had a great participation level yesterday. That's where you want to be during the program in the TNT chat community. There's a little red bubble lower right-hand part of your screen. If you open the browser, tntradio.live, you'll see it there. Click in there, log on, and you'll keep logged on there so you can just jump in for a new session each day. We're here Monday to Friday on the live link right now. Let's go over to our guest right now. I want to bring onto the stage our de facto European correspondent who, among all of our contacts, is physically the closest in proximity to Switzerland at the moment. Something going on up in the highlands of Switzerland. There's a meeting going on that's very expensive, I'm told. No hotel rooms under €1,000 per night. So what could they possibly be doing in Davos? Freddie Ponton, welcome to the program.
Hey, fantastic. Thank you very much for having me, Patrick. It's good to be on the show.
That's great to have you as well, Freddie, and to so kind of you to pass up Davos to be here with us today. I know you would have loved to be up there, hobnobbing with the globalist elite.
Yes, I've done that pretty much all my life, so I'm okay to cover it, from afar. But it's always an interesting place to be. I mean, a lot of people see only the meetings, the forum is being broadcasted. But there's a lot of things happening on the fringe of this major event, and obviously a lot of security. So if you don't mind security, I guess that's fine. And then, of course, we've been treated this year with many attractions, especially the clown show in front of the what they call the Swiss Antifa. Basically welcoming the guests, with a big smile, and they are probably the most peaceful Antifa I've never seen in my life. So clearly a lovely cosmetic job here done by the world wannabe masters, and I think this year is going to be again delivering on the promise that we should watch them out. That's for sure.
So in terms of what's getting a lot of the attention right now, Ursula von der Leyen has made some horrendous statements. Zelensky's up there. This seems like the dying last breaths of the whole Ukraine campaign. It's like their last ditch stand to kind of sell this proxy war as some sort of great thing for the future of Europe. Zelensky's up there saying, get ready to send your how many troops are you willing to sacrifice for us, kind of thing. I mean, unbelievable. Von der Leyen, she's doubling down on it as well. I mean, she's talking about my mandate since the start of my mandate. Her mandate, when was Ursula von der Leyen elected? I missed that part, Freddie.
Yeah, self-appointed, well, look, this is really unbelievable. I mean, this year it's really worth the show. Although last year I didn't watch much of it because I knew exactly what to expect. But I think this year it's entertaining. You can see a lot of these leaders are whether on the way out or to a new position. That is the case certainly for von der Leyen. And then the contents of the panel that are available, the discussions that will be entertained over the next few days are extremely, really vague, and try to understand really how this is going to help us to come to a more peaceful world and a more economically thriving, economy for everyone to enjoy. And I'm not really seeing a lot of answers right now. So of course we have to be very careful as far as selecting the discussions that seems to be bringing something to the debate, whether those who instead are actually serving as a distraction. So a lot of topics, and we had to pick some of them, and I had to choose the one that I thought that would be interesting. But as I said, very interesting, Patrick, to see the choice of topics from misinformation to disinformations, and how this will further societal and political divides, being a big chapter, looking into interstate and armed conflict, the rising conflict, the debate on artificial intelligence, and then inflation and economic downturn, the war of the corridors. That's how I call it. So, you can really cherry pick from that. And then fringe discussions, of course, very interesting with Antony Blinken early afternoon, just after midday, starting a long conversation with a host, which I found interesting in terms of him explaining his view on what a Palestinian a state would look like and how to get there. So I think we can go through that today. I think there's quite a lot of takeaway for the audience.
I think it's interesting that, and I don't think it's appropriate myself, that a Secretary of State from the U.S. will go to a meeting like the World Economic Forum and either meet people in private. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but he's there in an official state capacity, but he's like speaking off the cuff, making policy remarks that he has not made in front of a U.S. audience at the U.S. State Department or at a press conference. So it's like there's two things going on, Freddie. And so for Blinken to do this, it's almost like he's doing public relations for himself and for Israel, but doing it at Davos, which, to me, I find that to be hugely problematic for a Secretary of State. That's meant to be the top diplomat in the whole government structure. You don't go around making policy commentary off the cuff at these types of events. It's totally inappropriate, and it's very confusing because it waters down whatever the U.S. position is, Freddie. And this is like not any conflict. This isn't just like, oh, this is a little skirmish in Grenada, okay? This is like biblical. This is historic. This is going to redefine Middle Eastern, maybe geopolitics in the next 20 or 30 years, Freddie. Go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. To use the term that the South African legal defense uses, it's unprecedented. So, as you said, rightly so, and I think Blinken said it so as well, he's not there in his capacity as a politician because he's not a politician. He's in charge of foreign policies. His job is to make sure that he represents and he guides the foreign policy on behalf of the American people. So how much, guidance and how much is achieving of this goal by being there, I'm not quite sure of it. But it clearly seems to me that, as you rightly say so, that he's there to kind of explain himself and explain the decisions that he's made so far. I mean, he's been on a third or fourth tour in the Middle East, meeting primarily the Israeli and the Qatari and other countries around, like Jordan and Turkey as well. But what is that really achieved? And I think when I've listened to him earlier on, I had this feeling that the man has achieved very, very little. And I think he's extremely undermined by the power that lies in Israel, especially with a Prime Minister Netanyahu that doesn't even take a phone call from Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations. So he's someone that is not really interested in listening to what the US or the UN has to say, as long as the US does its job, remain in the East Med and provide the deterrence so that Israel can buy some time to finish the genocide in which he's involved in, as it is accused of by the Republic of South Africa. So a lot of things has happened literally in a nutshell, in a very short span of time. And I think it's really interesting to see how shaky the answers of Blinken was. And I'll give you a couple of examples there, but to counterbalance also the presence of Blinken, I think it's interesting to also see that the Iranian foreign ministers and the known caretaker of Pakistan, the prime minister is actually an interim prime minister. His name is Anwar Kakar, and Kakar is basically in Switzerland in Davos and having fringe meeting with the foreign minister of Iran, Hossein Abdullahian. So very interesting timing indeed. And I thought personally that was probably more interesting to listen to and to get an idea of what these two are up to and trying to understand what are their priorities and their topic of discussion. So that's what I focused on first, Patrick.
Well, the timing of that, we're going to break in here with what happened yesterday. And Iran launched missile attacks. They went international. They hit 3 different countries. So Iran launched attacks and hit Erbil in Iraq, Iraqi Kurdistan. They also hit a target in Baluchistan, on the Pakistani part of Baluchistan. So this was an anti-terror operation by the Iranians, according to Tehran, in response to the terrorist attack which hit on Iranian soil last week at the funeral of Qasem Soleimani, killed, I don't know, well over 100 people, injured 200 plus. So, and then a third missile strike, which didn't get any press, which I found interesting, which was they hit targets in Idlib. They hit the HTS, aka Al-Qaeda headquarters, and ISIS targets in Idlib. That's in Syria. So Freddie, so Iran, and everyone's freaking out in the pundit sphere. They don't know how, because they can't respond to any of it. So the question is, did they have permission to do the strike in Syria? 100%. Damascus said, go ahead, send it.
That's right.
No problem, just like they did in 2017 in Deir ez-Zor. Okay, yeah. And what that demonstrated, Freddie, is that distance is the same distance to Tel Aviv.
That's it. It's the message within the message.
Yeah, go ahead, Freddie.
Yes, it's a message in the message. These strikes were coordinated. I mean, it's the fingerprints of the coordinations. It's all over the place for those that wants to look at it seriously. But we can clearly see that the Mossad got his fair share of the strike. And for those that have followed Erbil after the Iraqi war, Erbil has been basically a headquarter for the Israeli Mossad for quite some time. The U.S. has obviously planted a couple of training shooting range there with a couple of contractors, some that I know personally, but I won't say more than that. And they've been operating there, gathering intelligence. These are basically CIA and Mossad outposts. They're gathering intelligence on Iran and other kind of factions, proxy outfit from Iran. So this is well known. Of course, it's an embarrassment because from a diplomatic point of view, it embarrasses the Kurdistan kind of authorities, and it puts basically the Iraqi government in a very promiscuous position. So they had to react the way they did, but I think this was just for the show, to be honest with you. Now, what's interesting, Patrick, I mean, you mentioned Syria, so I'm not going to go back to that, but...
Oh, wait, hold that thought. Hold that thought, Freddie. I want to get your comment on this, though. You mentioned Iran, Pakistani officials meeting at Davos. They also, an envoy the night before went to Pakistan. Okay, so do we really believe that Iran did not have some level of permission from Pakistan? Because I know their foreign minister, Freddie, at Pakistan said, "Oh, we rebuke this attack on Iran." It's almost, there's so much politics going on in here because it was a group that wasn't on the official terrorist list in Baluchistan. So is this a way of Pakistan sort of acting like they oppose it when in fact they already gave it the go ahead with Iran? That's the vibe I'm getting, Freddie, but hold your previous thought, but just comment on this for a moment. What do you think?
Well, you're absolutely spot on. And if you look at the comments that were made during the meeting between the Iranian foreign ministers and the interim prime minister from Islamabad, you can clearly see that these guys have been talking to each other for some time. So yes, now 100%, this is a coordinated effort. And both countries have called during this meeting the immediate end of the Zionist regime war on the besieged Palestinian territories. And they made a very interesting comment too. The first one, they say that, well, although the Americans think that they can manage the situation as they wish, the Israeli conflict and what has spilled over. But what the Iranian foreign minister said is that during wartime, anything can happen. It's a very, very important thing, because what he's saying is that you're going to see basically some alliance perhaps not well known, perhaps even unexpected alliance, starting to coordinate, not necessarily boots on the ground, but we've saw already previously a few months ago, Pakistan making an offer to Turkey, to Erdogan, should he ever require, the acquisitions of nuclear technology and force and power, that Pakistan will be more than happy to oblige. So, I mean, that's a very scary thought, to be honest with you, when you look at it. And then on the other side, see what's happening now and what we've just discussed with this meeting in Davos. These are not coincidences. These are messages that are very clear that there is more than just Iran that is extremely concerned about what is currently going on in Gaza and into the West Asian region as a whole. I mean, this has spilled over to Yemen, to Syria, to Iraq. I mean, this really, and they keep on talking about, if you look and listen to the US press, it's quite amazing that they say, we're doing everything to make sure this is not going to go regional. This is not going to be getting bigger than it needs to be. But it's already got bigger, So I think like they're a little bit behind schedule as far as reading the clues there, because for me, the clues are very serious. And I wouldn't be surprised that all these nations are starting to coordinate and plan, a real response, because obviously, and you talked about it very quickly, but the European Union is already now pretty much on the verge of accepting. There's a proposal on the table as far as sending a naval European operation in the East Med to support the pretty much shaky operation put together in zero time by the United States, which obviously has already saw a couple of attacks and have also conducted strikes on Yemen as well, and the Houthis. So the situation is extremely explosive, and there is no way they're going to deter people like the Houthis. I mean, the Saudis have tried with the help of the Americans for 9 years, and they couldn't get it. They had to abandon the project. So there's no way this is going anywhere. But this real meeting, this meeting in Davos, to go back to Pakistan and to Anwar Kakar, this Pakistani's interim prime ministers, he said that there's two things they want to do. First, there is an aspect which is economic. I think it's interesting to see that these countries talk about bilateral trade. Currently, it's 2.5 billion in volume, and they want to move to 5 billion by the end within 12 months. So you can clearly see that these countries have a lot in common. They all reiterate the fact that they are very willing to fight against terrorism, suddenly terrorism. So Pakistan and Iran, partner in fighting terrorism. How beautiful that is. And that is a great answer to the question you asked me earlier. That's exactly what they're done. They're going to go for Al-Qaeda because they know who's behind Al-Qaeda. They're going to go after anything that is sponsoring basically terrorist or proxy terrorism like the Mossad is used to do. So they're going after these outfits, which are clearly responsible behind the massacre that took place at Kerman earlier this month, Patrick.
Yeah, so here, this is a comment was made by a number of pundits, but basically, I think it was Sharmeen Norwani, who's the editor of The Cradle, which is right now probably the best Middle East online journal. She's based in Beirut. Somebody who I've known for a number of years and followed her work as well. She's saying, get ready for the reemergence of ISIS. It's being planned. She said they're seeding them in Iraq, can have them sort of show up in Syria again. I personally don't think they're going to be able to make the splash they made 10 years ago, Freddie, but they will try, because the Middle East is not the same as it was 10 years ago. There are forces that can snuff out ISIS literally within weeks. They could, as soon as the U.S. are turfed out of northeastern Syria, that's the end of ISIS in Syria, period. They're gone. The U.S. are only there to make sure that it is viable for ISIS, that it's just unstable enough. And there are other enclaves in Idlib. The Iranians attacked that. So it seems like, Freddie, that the axis of resistance, the Iranians, Hezbollah, the Ansar Allah in Yemen, the Hashid, the PMUs in Iraq, they're They're well wise to all this by now, Freddie. And I think the West believe that they can pull the same stunts, to pull that Swiss Army knife out, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and just throw that in the mix and then, destabilize the region again. Not that easy anymore. It's a different Middle East, Freddie.
And there is also, absolutely, it's a different Middle East. This is not the same animal they've dealt with, during the few rounds in Iraq. This is completely a different outfit, extremely well funded, extremely well trained. And there are obviously a lot of deterrents. We always talk about the American deterrents in the East Med, but I mean, one that is extremely serious there. You get two, you get the Turkish, and you get the Hezbollah in Lebanon. That's really Israel, although Israel has the Air Force, which is believed that it can accomplish what they couldn't accomplish in Gaza. But again, you don't win war with just planes. You just not today, not in the context of having alliances, having people like Iran, like Russia, and the technology today that is available to this operation, especially air defense capabilities. I mean, does the U.S. really think that, Hezbollah doesn't have air defense capabilities? No, they are dealing with a serious matter of hand, and there is no way to get out of any military operation against the Hezbollah, without getting hurt. I haven't said that Hezbollah will win the conflict, but what I'm saying that the damage inflicted on anyone that is starting to get or the idea that they can go out there and destabilize Lebanon or, bomb Lebanon is really mistaken, because I think, as you said earlier, and as I confirmed, Iran is sending a message within a message. It's telling you, I can bomb a building literally around the corner from the U.S. Embassy in Erbil. So I'm telling you that what I have, my technology is extremely precise. And the next strikes, I'm going to show you how far I can go and still remain precise. That's the lesson to be learned from what we've seen. Whether you agree or not, it's irrelevant. What matters is how do we analyze that, and what does that mean for the conflict itself?
I want to talk about this battle group that the EU is planning to deploy, this naval group to, I believe, to the Red Sea. I think is that's on their sort of list of destinations there to help out with the anti-Houthi operation. I want to talk about that. Also go back to some of the comments that van der Leyen has said at the WEF about Ukraine joining the EU. So Stoltenberg's up there. We're going to get them into NATO. Ursula's up there. We're going to get them into the into the EU, bring in Ukraine into the family of nations. So that's what's going on there. So let's talk about Europe on the other side. We'll take a break right now with TNT, Today's News Talk. In a few minutes, we'll be right back. I'm here with Freddie Ponton, independent researcher and journalist based in France, commenting on the WEF circus that's going on right now and the circus that's unfolding in the Red Sea. Absolutely incredible. I'm Patrick Henningsen. Stay right there. We'll see you in a few.
De-weaponizing weather with reality and perspective.
I can tolerate another person's opinion if it's not a lie. People say, well, that's just my opinion. But if your opinion is based on non-fact, what is that? I really believe we have nothing but evil that is pushing this climate change situation. The ultimate evil statement I've seen in this phony climate war came out from Reuters and the Biden administration, claiming that the massacre of 200 Christians on Christmas Day, for goodness sakes, had to do with climate change. Now, does anybody seriously believe that? Well, apparently a lot of these people do. We have had to deal with this for many years. John Kerry blamed the rise of Boko Haram on drought in Nigeria. Nigeria's rainfall has been above normal the last 25 years. It's similar to what happened in the 1950s. Let's see, was there Boko Haram in the 1950s? Was there the massacre of 200 Christians on Christmas Day in the 1950s? Yet it was raining more in the 1950s. What kind of evil is that? And I'll tell you something, it's across the board. I don't care if it's climate, I don't care if it's COVID, I don't care if it's a January 6th insurrection. This is worthy of Germany in the 1930s, the old Soviet Union, and China. What is amazing about it is the country that actually took the stand against that is now using those techniques on people that wish to keep the country the way it was founded, and they're using climate. This is TNT Climate and Weather Watchdog meteorologist Joe Bastardi asking you to enjoy the weather. It's the only weather you got.
This is the Patrick Henningsen Show on TNT Radio.
All right, folks, welcome back. Welcome back. It's Wednesday here, broadcasting live, still in hour number one. I'm joined on the line right now by independent researcher and journalist Freddie Ponton, based in Europe. Right now, we're commenting on Davos. Freddie, just a couple of highlights from Davos. Ursula von der Leyen has announced, we are beginning to screen the laws coming out of Ukraine to see if they are European compliant, that she will be welcome into the family of nations in the European Union. This is my mandate, says Ursula von der Leyen. And then Guterres is up there banging on about climate change and global boiling. Record snowfalls in the United States, perhaps the longest winter on record's coming. They're still banging on about climate change. But those are some of the highlights there. I want to talk about that, plus the European battle group. But what do you think about this kind of Ukraine coming into the EU? Is this just kind of like PR to kind of make the project look like it's still viable? I mean, what are the chances of Ukraine, or what's left of it, being entered into the EU in like the next, 20 years? What do you think?
Well, the whole concept is telling you something. First of all, is that, there's not enough corruption in the European Union. So they thought there was a good idea to bring Ukraine, to make sure they stay on top of their corruption game or the corrupt game. But, more serious note, Patrick, I think that clearly none of what they're saying is making sense, whether it comes from NATO or the EU, because they talk like they are in charge, making sense, like trying to tell the people in the world that they are making the shot, they are making the shots about Ukraine, when clearly Ukraine is about basically to have to come to a negotiation table where the terms will be dictated by Russia. So what they need to say is that whatever is left of Ukraine, which is very little, and the key components of the economy of Ukraine are now pretty much in the hand of the Russian. So whatever is left of Ukraine will enter the European Union. Well, that's just something very far-fetched. And as you just said, this is more about a PR to keep Ukraine into the discussions, to maintain the appearance that the EU is still behind Ukraine. Zelensky has been invited at Davos because there is obviously trying a desperate attempt from the US and the EU to re-engage basically the conflict in a way they're just buying time that they don't have, because at any time now Russia might be able to push further. It really depends how much territory and how much life needs to basically been taken away before they actually realize that this war has already been lost. So the whole thing is a desperate looking good PR stunt, but I don't see any teeth into that. It just doesn't fit the bill at the moment. So that's why I say there's a lot of distraction in this meeting, and I'm trying to stay away, and that is one of the distractions.
Yeah, Stoltenberg, I'll sort of save you from the pain of having to watch his remarks on the panel discussions. I mean, he's like stuttering, and I think maybe they're winning, but Russia's definitely not winning, but Ukraine is not losing. And this was like 20 minutes of this. It was really embarrassing. So this guy is basically like on borrowed time. He's supposed to be sitting in the Norwegian Central Bank as like the head, a director, whatever. They said, oh, can you stay on for another year? Because they couldn't find anybody that wants to be at the head of NATO amidst its worst failure in its history in Ukraine. So there's Stoltenberg still selling the conflict. So the whole thing, I think, is a disaster on so many different levels. It's not going to get better. The money's not there. So now they're looking for projects further afield. So with this European battle group, I'll call it, and I know the EU do assemble battle groups and peacekeeping missions and whatnot under the European Union banner, under collective defense, which isn't formally together yet, but they're sort of trying to look for opportunities to kind of launch this kind of EU army, or the concept of it. It's very difficult to do. Are they planning to go to the Red Sea? And what would they possibly be accomplishing? Because they're not going to fire any shots between Ansar Allah, the Houthis in Yemen. They're not going to be exchanging fire with them, Freddie. What exactly are they going to send?
It has nothing to do with the EU. It has to do with the United States. Basically, putting EU back in their shoes. They tell them, well, we run the show in Europe, you don't. So we're telling you now, you don't want to come and be part of our little coalition there. That's fine. We understand you have diplomatic, commercial, whatever, different kind of a level of interest and diplomatic interest in the region. So why don't you come under your own banner? But you got to be there, because Israel is in a dire situation. They have not achieved any goal in the Gaza Strip. That is clear, undisputed. None of the goal has been achieved. The hostage has not been released, and they've not been able to really kind of threaten Hamas in any form of shape. They're still pretty much intact there. And these guys, as soon as the Golani brigades left the next morning, they were firing 50 launchers at a couple of kibbutz, on the border of Gaza to show everyone that we're still there and we still have plenty of capacities. I mean, they have their own manufacturing. If you listen to Obeida, the Al-Qassam leader, telling that we are a manufacturing operation. We manufacture rocket bullets. I mean, these guys are just literally facing, they are operating below the feet of the Israeli defense forces, manufacturing, missiles and bullets. I mean, I'm laughing, but it's clearly a show that this has been extremely well prepared. But I'm just going to make a point before we'll talk about this naval operation from the EU. And it's a very important point that very people have actually talked about it, but it's very important to understand the reason of why Hamas did what they did on the 7th of October. And that actually transpired during the South African court case against Israel, which they accuse of committing genocide in Gaza. I don't think the Hamas is looking for a military victory. It doesn't matter. They've already made the commitments, and they know that they obviously have some form of inferiority as far as the defense or attack capabilities. They understand that, and they've accepted it. But they are going for a political victory, and that's exactly what this case at the ICJ was. And I think that what we are seeing now is that everything we're seeing, the EU moving real estate in the ASMED, the coalition with the United States, all this is a response to the 7th of October. It's nothing short than that. So you want to coin a victory, and if Hamas has to coin a victory, that's going to have to be this one, because nothing has ever moved so fast, so quick. Huge amount of money, logistics, military capabilities has been deployed toward Israel, and yet today, everybody and the majority today on social media and in the public, in the court of public opinion, is in favor of Palestine. So that's a massive victory. So it doesn't matter what the EU does. This is all for the show. This is to show Israel, we're with you, but we don't want to be seen as too, pro-Israeli. So we'll do it around the corner, hiding behind the United States and the coalitions. But all in all, if you look at what they are deploying, if you go to war, you got to need 90,000, 100,000 kind of soldier. That's kind of standard for, when you look at someone moving troops, if you move 25,000, this is not a war. It's a conflict, maybe border conflict, but that's very little chance to escalate. You move 100,000 troops, you got a serious war in preparation. Well, it goes the same for the Navy, So what are they deploying, Patrick? For this particular mission, although this was not confirmed officially, but the discussion really took place, and Bloomberg had a primer access to that information, and they reported on it. And they say that at least 3 destroyers or frigates with multi-mission capabilities are going to be deployed. Now, the proposal is on the table, and they believe that the plan should be kind of wrapped up as soon as January the 22nd, which is basically next week or at the end of the week. And the idea would be to deploy these destroyers or frigates by the end of February. So this does not address any form of emergency or any form of kind of a military naval plan that will encircle the Yemen and providing a real shield in the Red Sea before the end of February. As far as I'm concerned, nobody knows where we will be at the end of February, because every day things are happening. And when they happens, reactions happen as well.
Yeah, because firstly, this Yemen's territorial waters, they're operating in there. So it's not like they can blockade that side of Yemen, northern Yemen, or, where Ansar Allah is based in Sana'a. It's not like they can blockade that and then shield maritime traffic on the western side of the Red Sea. It's just not feasible. And I think you're right, Freddie. These individual countries did not jump at the U.S. invitation to join this coalition initially. So now they're just, hoisting up the EU flag and then kind of hiding behind that because they don't want to be involved. I see this, Freddie, as a test, because do European countries have their own independent foreign policy, or are they going to be, herded into a collective policy under the banner of Brussels, which is very easy to control by the United States? At one point of control in Brussels, and then you get everybody. This has always been the battleground, and that's actually been the problem with European collective defense, because a lot of individual member states are not comfortable with signing on for a military operation or some expeditionary force because it's under a Brussels banner. Foreign policy is a very personal thing to each country, and I think this is a big stumbling block. I mean, they nearly have Germany under their thumb and a few other countries, but they don't really have a lot. It's not only that, Freddie. Name me a European country that has a naval force that can be deployed right now on its, say, 48 hours notice to somewhere in the world to do some kind of a job. I don't know of any. Is there such a thing? It's not the British Navy. They can't even staff their aircraft carriers in Britain. So, who is it?
The Brits as a rapid force, the French as a rapid force as well, but we're not near to provide, and also to have the will to provide. It's not just the capacity. We saw that during major exercise, during Baltops 22 and other kind of major naval exercises, that if you put this coalition together, you can get 100 to 200 ships, in a sea, and they can do something and exercise and work together. But it's really the message, I think, that they're trying to kind of control, because the message is more important than the deployment itself. The message that you're sending is that you're supporting the coalition. So the European Union now is supporting the US effort in the East Med to protect Israel under the disguise of protecting basically maritime transportations and all that kind of thing, which is, I think we all understand is a pretext. Of course, it's gonna kind of disturb the maritime transportations and the flow of goods. But I think the Houthis have never changed their tune. They've always said that they were targeting Israeli bound ship, those that will go to occupied Palestine harbor. The other side is really, as I said, if the Americans now have kind of presented themselves as belligerent, so they have become basically a real target for the Houthis, because from a legal point of view, they were attacked by a foreign adversary in their own waters and on their own land. So they absolutely, from an international law point of view, have the right to defend themselves, because this particular conflict involved states and not territories. And from that point of view, I think the EU is going to have to be very, very cautious about what they're doing, because if they want to see the Red Sea, completely blocked, because now you're going to have European ships, European flagship, that goes to European ports. The Houthis can say, well, if EU is going to be part of that defense mechanism, joining the American coalition, then they're going to be open target if they start to operate in our waters. So extremely dangerous. And I think the outlining kind of a feeling that I'm having here is that there is definitely a sense of intelligence gathering that will be performed by the European Union, because they're pretty good at that as well. And I think they're trying to sense whether they have a shot at it or whether this is really going to go bad for them. So I think they're just trying to show presence on different fronts because they have opened so many fronts. And the Muslim world, the Arab world is trying to, rethink this whole situation about normalization with Israel, because they can see what's happening there when clearly Israel could stop what they're doing in Gaza. They've had enough, basically, people killed. They have tortured. They have literally terrorized a complete population that is defenseless, and only a little resistance group that is trying to manage to stay alive. It wouldn't cost anything for Israel to stop, simply to stop, because all this will start to come down. To talk about de-escalation, you got to talk about telling Prime Minister Netanyahu to de-escalate, because the proportionality is way beyond, the Rubicon at this moment in time. It's way above what Yemen, they're entitled to have.
That's all the Yemenis are asking for from the beginning. Ceasefire, stop the genocide of the people in Gaza, and then we'll, stop interdicting Israeli ships. So and that's all they were doing. So they started off, they weren't stopping all naval traffic. This was a lie put out in the global media, by US, by Israel, by mainstream media, that the Houthis are stopping global trade. No, they were very specific in the ships that they're interdicting. They've declared sanctions on Israel. They're going to seize any ships, stop any Israeli ships providing any material support or going to Israeli ports, period, or owned and operated by Israelis, period. Very specific. So what the U.S. have done here, Freddie, is they've gone and stopped global trade. The United States has said, no, if Israel can't go through the Bab el-Mandeb Straits, then nobody can go through the Bab el-Mandeb Straits. And let's whistle, get our European friends over, help us put on a good show here to make this look like it's a broad-based coalition effort. I mean, this is just absolute theater, Freddie. Unbelievable. I'm here with Freddie Ponton. Thank you for joining us. We got to wrap this segment up, Freddie, but really appreciate your input this week on TNT.
Hey, it's my pleasure, Patrick. All the best. Cheers.
There he goes, ladies and gentlemen. That is Freddie Ponton, journalist, researcher based in Europe, talking about Davos, talking about the circus in the Red Sea that's shaping up to really be unbelievable stuff. Top of the hour news headlines coming up on the other side. We'll connect with Basil Valentine, Blake Lovewell. We got all sorts of things to talk about. Finance, Middle East. It's all coming up in just a few. Stay right there.